Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our second in the series of our webinars. Today's topic will be the Hagberg Falling Number method, where we will be looking at the principles behind the test, as well as going through a live demonstration of the test. Now, just a few housekeeping rules. We hope that all your audio will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If there are any questions that you have during the course of the presentation or when we're doing the live demonstration, please feel free to use the chat facility that is available within Zoom. So a very brief agenda of what we'll be going through today. I'm going to give you a very, very brief background on the Hagberg test. It's why we run the test. Looking at sprout damage or pre-harvest germination, as well as the implications of pre-harvest germination. I'll then proceed to give you a quick run through of the test principle as well as the test method, and then we're going to look at the most important method details, which we will actually demonstrate to you live on the instrument. Okay. So a very brief background. The Hagberg Falling Number method was developed in response to a need for a practical method to detect alpha amylase and sprout damage in grain and flour. This was a collaboration between the founder of Burton, Mr. Harold Burton, and Sven Hagberg, when they were employed at the cereal lab of the Swedish Institute for Crafts and Industries in the 1950s. So it is a method that has been with us for well over 50 years. And it has stood the test of time, evidenced by it being adopted as an official method by the ICC, Cereals and Grain Association, which is formerly the AACC, the ISO, as well as more locally, CCAT. So, sprout damage or pre-harvest germination. This occurs when grain germination starts while grain is still on the plant before harvest. Under the right conditions, so when you have a wet period just prior to harvest and high humidity, once the grain has reached physiological maturity, the grain embryo starts producing hormones which trigger enzyme synthesis within its allureal layer. And as these enzymes start being produced, they tend to start solubilizing all the storage material which is lying within the grain's endosperm. Most notably starch, which is broken down by amylases. Now, apart from the environmental factors that contribute to pre-harvest germination, there's also a genetic effect where you have some wheat varieties being more prone to pre-harvest germination than others, most particularly the softer wheat varieties. So, with the focus mainly being on alpha amylase, your alpha amylase is a hydrolytic enzyme which is involved in the breakdown of starch. And there are a number of different alpha amylases, as well as other amylases, which contribute to the breakdown of starch within the endosperm. So the implications of pre-harvest germination, you tend to see these both in processing as well as in end product quality. So in terms of processing, you tend to start, when you have low falling numbers, you tend to have those that are quite sticky. As your process proceeds to baking, you find that you also have decreased loaf volumes as well as poor bread slicing characteristics. There's also an influence on sensory qualities where you tend to have a much darker crust and crop, as well as effects on the eating quality of the bread from a texture perspective, as well as flavor. So we did our own little experiment here in Jordan, where we had some sound wheat, which we ran through a lab mill, and we also had some sprouted grain. And I just wanted to show you all what the impact of just having 10 sprouted grains was on the falling number. So you can see just how significant an effect having just 10 sprouted grains out of a total of well over 6,000 grains, which would typically be held in a 300-gram mass. The stirrer on the left showing you the results from your sound grain, and the stirrer on the right showing you what the impact of those 10 sprouted grains is. So you don't need to have a substantial amount of sprouted grain to spoil a good batch of grain. So the test principle, the falling number method, is an internationally standardized method for the determination of alpha amylase in grain, flour, and other starch-containing products, most particularly wheat and rye. It determines alpha amylase activity using starch in the sample as a substrate. So the method is based upon the rapid pasting of a suspension of flour or meal using a boiling water bath and the subsequent measurement of the liquefaction by alpha amylase. So falling number values bear a complex inverse relationship with the quality of alpha amylase in the sample, and this relationship is known as the Burton liquefaction equation. So in terms of the equipment that is required, if you are handling grain, you need a lab mill, which needs to be in appropriate working condition, and also be able to give you a ground material that is compliant with the method. You also need distilled water, as well as the falling number instrument, which should also be in good working order. So during the test, on the left here, I've shown some starch granules. The sample there, which is indicated A, that shows you what an intact starch granule is. B and C show you what the effect of alpha amylase is physically on the starch granule. So as your starch granules are exposed to water and heat, what tends to happen is they expand. They take in that water and they start expanding. And this is exactly what contributes to the thickening effect of starch, which happens during the test. So now if you've got a situation where you've got your starch granules which have started being acted on by your amylase enzymes, okay? As a result of all those perforations in the starch granule, your starch granule is actually prevented from achieving that maximum expansion. So consequently, that will result in a decreased thickening effect of the starch. As mentioned earlier on, there is a relationship between the falling number and the actual enzyme activity present in grain. Okay? Now, from these figures here, from this figure here, you will be able to notice that this is it's not a linear relationship. So there's no additive effect of alpha amylase. It's actually more an exponential relationship. So looking at the test method, following sample preparation, your flour or meal slurry containing viscometer tube is placed in the instrument, which is set to run at 100 degrees. And that enables you to boil contents of the viscometer tube. The instrument automatically starts counting when it detects the presence of the tube. After 5 seconds, the instrument hook is going to pick up the stirrer and stirs the sample for 60 seconds. Thereafter, the instrument releases the stirrer after exactly 60 seconds and allows the stirrer to drop through the pasted slurry by its own weight. The falling number is then established as the time it takes for the stirrer to drop from the top position to the bottom, and this also includes the initial 5-second wait as well as the 60-second stirring time. So when running the test, there are about 20 significant steps that you would consider that have a significant effect on the test. Now, one might think that, right, I mean, if I have to think about 20 different things that I have to do to get this test running right, it surely must take a lot of time. It certainly does not add to the amount of time that you end up running the test. And when my colleague runs through a practical test, he will, during his presentation, run through all of these considerations that you need to take note of. So there are some additional features apart from simply looking at the traditional falling number. There is a supplementary method available which looks at fungal alpha amylase, and this operates at a lower temperature, and you also introduce buffers and the starch substrate. Looking a little further into the future, there have been developments that have in fact been going on since 1997, where Burton have been looking at a more rapid method, which is based on the first 60 seconds of the test when the sample is being stirred. And that works by monitoring the amount of force that is generated in the sample during that first 60 seconds. And within that first 60 seconds, you're able to predict the sample falling number, saving you potentially 3 to 5 minutes test. So you can expect this particular application to be coming soon. Right, so most importantly, in this particular webinar, which is a little different from our previous ones, we have opted to actually run through a whole practical session. So I'll now hand over to my colleague, Mike Taylor.
Okay, good morning. So we're just going to run through how to do falling number test. So I've already pre-weighed 2 samples of 7 grams of ground wheat, and we'll just run a duplicate test. You can see we've got the falling number 1000 piece of kit here. We've connected it up to a recirculating chiller bath, so that we don't need to have it into the cold water supply. And just to show you, this is the single instrument doing single tests, the falling number 1310. So take 2 clean falling number tubes. And we'll spend 25 mils of water into each one. And the water for the test should be freshly made distilled water and changed every day, following the official method. 25 mils, so you can weigh that before you start to make sure that you're dispensing the correct amount of water. Okay, so the method states that you should shake each one vigorously. First of all, we just want to make sure that we've got all the flour mixed in. So the method states 40 shakes plus or minus 10. Because I'm doing a double and each hand shakes slightly differently, I'll swap over after 20. So now we need to just scrape down slurry using the end of the rod. Regardless of whether we're using a double or a single instrument, the shaking is the same, the stir is exactly the same, and the instruments work exactly the same way. They both count up to 60 seconds and then they're released. So I've put 2 samples in here, similar to what Jadala mentioned earlier in the presentation. One that's just a normal ground wheat sample, and one that we've added some freeze-dried grain to. While that goes off, to ensure that your tubes clean and dry before use, that there are no breakages on them. Quite high tolerance tubes. You need to make sure, like I said, your water is replaced daily with freshly distilled or deionized water. And I'll show you after the test how we can check that the stirrer itself is still fit for use. The best thing to do is just put it on a bench and just roll it across the bench, and if it looks straight as it's rolling, then you know it's straight, it's okay. Look at the wheel at the end, it should be fully chromed. If any brass is showing through, then that can also have an effect on the results. You might consider replacing it. Okay, so this is just going to run through now. So I don't know if anybody, or much of you have seen this new Falling Number 1000 model. you'll notice the difference is it doesn't have an external water level control like the one that we've had in the past. It's got an inbuilt level sensor and automatically adjusts the water in the bath via a sensor inside itself, and it uses an external reservoir to either top up the bath automatically or to empty itself automatically. And again, this, you need to make sure this is filled up every day. Okay, so we can see the difference straight away. The pre-sprouted grain is completed. And on this new model, all the results are stored internally. There's a procedure where you can put a USB stick in the side and you can extract the data. So if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask, you can type it into the group chat. I'm quite happy to answer any questions that people might have. Okay, this test, we don't know how this is going to go on for, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to manually stop the test. Okay. So we want to make sure when we lift it out, we're touching the plastic cassette so we don't burn our fingers into the cassette stand, and then you would clean your tubes carefully. If you've got a solid tube cleaner, you would put the plastic protection cup over the end and just clean the tubes and make sure that they're clean and dry before next use. If it's coming to stirrers, need to be cleaned properly. What you need to ensure is when you're cleaning these coming to stirrer, is that you make sure you clean around the end as well. You don't want any material stuck up there. So that's a demonstration of the new Falling Number 1000. Burton's methodology, the reason that we do a double test is the idea is that you would do two samples on the same load and you would average the results of left and right. Now, I know a lot of people just tend to do one load and roll number two, so they've got two separate results, but the intention of the double unit is that you get an average from the same sample. Some of the things that we find when we're on site is distilled water, double checking the quality of the distilled water. We found on a couple of occasions when we've gone on site, we've done some tests with the reference flour and it's been failing. And when we've looked into it a bit further, we've used clean, fresh distilled water and the test passes perfectly well. So just make sure that even though you're replacing this in here every day, make sure that the device that you're using for producing the distilled water is actually working okay. It can cause problems. It is something that we haven't seen in the past. What also comes in the kit is a manual pipette in case you don't have a dispenser or your dispenser is out of action. You have a manual 25ml pipette that you would just fill the vessel with. You drop the pipette in, it'll also fill. There's a yellow line for the 25ml mark, so you use your finger over the end, drop out what you need, and then fill your volume in the tube. 25ml. These are available as spare, they do come as part of every new kit. And when I was shaking it for 40 times, plus or minus 10 times, Burton do sell an automated machine called the Shaker-matic. It is available if anybody is interested in that. cleaning the tubes. Like I said, there's what's called the spoly tube cleaner, which attaches to a tap fitting in your sink. It's just an automatic way of cleaning the tubes. So do be careful when you're cleaning them. We know they're expensive, but they are made to a very tight tolerance. Also, when you're cleaning your bungs, make sure you clean off any residues so you can avoid cross-contamination. Okay, well that's the demonstration. If anybody's got any questions, please note them down. I'll try and answer them for you either now or separately via email. We have made a recording of this presentation, so we will be sending it out to all participants. Unless Gisela's got anything else you'd like to add, I think that's it for today. Okay, hello to people that are still there. Sorry about that. We had some issues with the power. Everything just disappeared from us. So we've got some questions through. We've answered some of them on the online chat, but we'll just read some out and just see if we can answer as many as we can. So the grinding procedure, yeah, there is a specification to grind to. The particle size sieve in the mill is 0.8 millimeters. So it is quite critical that that particle size is met. There is a specification for it in the user manual, but when we come and do our calibration checks, we run a sample and we sieve it out to make sure that it meets the manufacturer's specification. The only thing that would stop that really is a poor grinding cross or a hole in the sieve of the grinder. The sieve is replaced anyway and the grinding cross is inspected. So yeah, particle size is important. As is sampling. Okay, so does the instrument require distilled water? So distilled or deionized for running the test, the 25 ml in the tube. And that should be fresh water every day. Inside the water bath, it should be a mixture of distilled and tap water. It should be mainly distilled water, and I think the advice we get from Pern is a cupful of tap water. And if you don't have an automatic system like the Falling Number 1000, you should check that first thing in the morning, you should check it at lunchtime, and again, if you're using it in the evening or at weekends, check it again. The level will drop. So somebody's asked, how much is the instrument? For that kind of detail, you'd need to speak to Christine at Calibre. She will be able to offer you advice on the price of the single instrument and the double Falling Number 1000, and also any accessories such as the Shaker-matic. So cleaning them, well, Pern recommend using their Spolit cleaner. That just uses normal tap water fired up into the instrument, and it's got a brush on the end, and then just dry them either with a cloth and let them just air dry, or if you've got a drying cabinet, that's the way to do it.
Well, there's a question here that says, you have any indication of how the falling number is going to evolve with the UK crop this year? Well, I suppose we'll just have to follow the weather patterns and see whether we do get a lot of wet weather towards as we inch closer to harvest. The other thing that we would need to look out for is perhaps any periods where we have cold snaps, because that also can have an influence on pre-harvest germination. There's a question here, how critical is it to use dry tubes? Yes, it is critical, though your sample, the volume of water that you're adding to each sample is 25 mils. That is plus or minus 0.2 mils. So you can imagine having even just a single drop of water being present is going to have an effect. The other important thing to remember there is when you're running the test, you're using distilled or deionized water, whereas when you're doing the cleaning, you're just using ordinary tap water. So you can also imagine what effect any salts that are present in your tap water are going to have on the test.
I'll just add to that, if it's coming to stir, it needs to be dry as well for the same reasons.
Yeah. There's a question here which says, I'm using flour and not grinding the grains myself. How fresh does it need to be? By the time it reaches me, it's already a few weeks old. Is it still relevant to do the test? I would say it is still relevant. If you consider in the grain trade, where you have grain being stored over a period of time, that grain is being tested as it comes in and as it goes out. So yes, even samples that have been stored over a period of time, you still can test them and the test is still relevant. Okay. We'll take one last question. So in the absence of any additional questions, I'd like to thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. I also like to thank my colleague, Mike, for joining us here today. In the near future, we will make the webinar available on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much. And we look forward to working with you in the future.